Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, welcome. My name's Monica, and in today's video, I'm going to go over my February reading. February was a fun month. I read a lot. I didn't realize how much I read until towards the end. I was like, and I had a lot of like good books, but they weren't perfect books, okay? And I'm getting more stingy with my 5 stars. So if I give a 4.5 stars, it's really a 5-star. It just didn't quite meet the I am obsessed with this book standard, okay? So let's go through the books. So I read 43 books in the month of February, and out of those 43 books, I had 10 5 stars, so it was a good one. 11 4.5 stars, 14 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, 2 3 stars, 1 I left unrated. There's reasons for that. And then I had 2 rereads. I also read 5 ARCs or ALCs. My breakdown for how I read these books was 39 audiobooks and 4 ebooks. So the genre breakdown, I read 3 historical romances, 17 contemporaries, 3 sports romances, 10 romantic suspense, 3 mafia romances or motorcycle romances. They were mafia though. 1 dark romance, 2 paranormal romances, 1 romantasy, and 3 cozy mysteries. The first book that I gave 5 stars to in the month of February was Night Moves by Nora Roberts. This is on my Nora Roberts journey, right? Because I'm just trying to read as many Nora Roberts as I can. And I will say this, I've broken the 200 mark. I am down to, I think, 195 books I have to read now instead of 275. So I'm doing pretty good. I read a total of 80 so far. All right, so Night Moves. This one, it was written in 1985, and this is about a professional composer and songwriter. Her name is Maggie. She purchased a large house with lots of land in the middle of nowhere, small town, USA. She wanted to escape LA because of her late husband's suicide. There was a lot of trauma and stuff back there, and she was done with it. So Cliff was hired as a landscaper to build a pond in the backyard. There was immediate tension between Cliff and Maggie, and as he was working, he uncovered a dead body in her backyard. They both, the tension, the chemistry, and the tension that they had together was very, very dynamite. All right, it was it happened very quickly, the tension, because he's kind of a playboy type character, and she's like, she wasn't looking for something, right? But obviously this is a romantic suspense, so she's gonna find something. Anyway, it was very chaotic how they grew to love each other. It was interesting. So, and it's also a bit of a product of its time, but this one was actually really good. The audiobook, because I got the audiobook for this, and I got it in a sale like 2-3 years ago. That's how long I've had this book. And I got it because it was narrated by Andy Arndt. So it was recently made into an audiobook. The tension between Cliff and Maggie grew as they were trying to figure out who this guy was, and they figured it out, and who killed this man. And a lot of people had reasons to kill this man, because this man was a piece of crap. He was abusive, and the guy they found was going to murder people, or if he hadn't, I don't think he had murdered people at this point, but he was intending to murder someone. Anyway, everybody was a suspect because this guy was so bad. So I love that kind of suspense, because if someone, who could have killed this great human being, the suspect pool narrows, but if the person is a real jerk, a lot of people have reasons, right? There was a lot of attention to detail that Nora does put in her books. Specifically how Maggie, is dealing with her trauma through music, and how she is writing this music. And I loved the way they grew together. I loved the way her and Cliff were trying to figure out who did this, because the killer was there, and it was really well done. I highly recommend this one and it's on the shorter side. and it's a good romantic suspense. The next book that I did give 5 stars to was another Nora Roberts. Like I said, I've been reading a lot of Nora Roberts because of this. And this one is True Betrayals. This goes around horse racing and owning horse. So Kelsey lived with her mother's death for well over a decade because she assumed her mother had died until Naomi, her mother, contacted her. So she goes to Virginia to meet her mother and to find out who her mother was. She meets Gabe, who is a scoundrel, very much a scoundrel, and he self-made fortune. He's a self-made man, but he made his fortune from gambling because he was good, and he owned the farm next to her mother's, and they were both breeding horses for racing and to breed the mares so they would have better bloodlines and stuff like that. It was a whole thing. So anyway, as Kelsey starts to bond with her mother, find out exactly why her mother had to disappear for that amount of time that she did, she started to date Gabe, and they started growing closer romantically. Now, Kelsey, she's recently divorced, so she's not as trusting as she normally would be, and for reasons, so I'm not going to get into those reasons, but this is a family saga with a lot of drama, okay? But this family saga the setting is better than the villa. I'm not going to lie, the setting's a lot better than the villa. I love seeing how the horse racing and what happened to her mother decades ago is kind of starting to repeat again, and someone is trying to go after Kelsey. I loved Gabe and Kelsey together as they worked together to see who was doing this stuff that also happened to her mother years and years ago. And I really enjoyed it because we actually got to see the horses race and the jockeys and stuff like that. I will say there are trigger warnings you got to know going into this book. It's attempted rape, murder, physical assault, drugging horses, death of horses talked about. Because the guy, the bad man was, the bad man. Our perpetrator was a very, very bad man. So that's, I'm tired. Okay. But yes, 5 stars for that one. Let's move on from Nora. The next book that I did read from Kristen Proby, I had an ALC for this, and it was When We Burn. So this is her newest small town romance. It just recently came out. This is a spinoff on the Blackwells of Montana series. So we meet Bridger and Danny, who we met them in the last book, She's a Wild One. So you have to understand about She's a Wild One and When We Burn. There's talk about past animal abuse, past murder, and lots of talk about past trauma from child abuse. And we open up with this book with her father trying to kill her by drowning her because she did not want to be hurt. So be aware of that going in, okay? But this one is really well done. Okay, this is brother's best friend, childhood friends to lover, single dad, and she is an elementary school teacher and he is a firefighter. So Bridger Blackwell and Danny Lexington, they've known each other since they were kids, right? She was his safe place, especially like that scene where her dad tried to kill her. Her brother Holden saved her and got her to the Blackwells. Her brother Holden saves her from being killed by her dad, and takes her to the Blackwells to Bridger, and Bridger is able to help her calm down while getting the truth of what happened out of her. And she was a little kid. So now we jump to present day, and Danny has been living in Bozeman as a teacher because she refused to go back to their small town while her father was still alive, because for obvious reasons, right? I would be pretty much the same way. So she moves back and she's the new kindergarten teacher in town. And Bridger's little girl, Birdie, she is in Danny's class. So Bridger and Danny were really good friends when they were kids, and he wanted her when they were teenagers, but he did not dare cross that line. She needed to stay away from where her father was, right? And to basically to be protected and not to come back to this town while her father was alive. He made a mistake one night and got a girl pregnant and married her because he was trying to do the right thing. And now he has an ex-wife and is a single dad. And his daughter is very, very cute. She has some chronic illness symptoms going on, but they couldn't figure out what it was. Danny actually figured it out and helped them figure out what it was. And it's not something that happens a lot in childhood, but it did. Anyway, as they start to bond again and she starts to really become a parent to Birdie, they start falling in love, but someone is setting fires around the town. And we find out there are some very psycho people in this book who really like to set fires. Well, one person specifically, but anyway, I'm not gonna ruin it for you. There's a lot of chemistry. The chemistry is perfect in this book, and it has always been you vibes, and I've been loving the always been you vibes. This has been my kryptonite lately. And he's like, she is his woman, and he was never gonna not let her go. And there really wasn't a third act breakup. I loved how Danny just fit in with Bridger and Birdie. The relationship development between all three characters was really well done. The romance was very swoony. I highly recommend this one. I enjoyed it. The next 5-star I had was First Time Caller by B.K. Borison. This one is definitely delivers on the Sleepless in Seattle vibes. So Aiden is a jaded host of Baltimore's romance hotline radio show, which is called Heartstrings, and into struggling. Lucy's 12-year-old daughter calls in asking for dating advice for her mom because her mom just didn't date. She was too busy taking care of her child, and she worked as a car mechanic, and she was busy doing her thing. Her daughter calls up to Heartstrings, and she has a very good conversation with Aiden, and the conversation goes viral. Lucy is asked to help host Heartstrings because everybody is obsessed with her and Aiden. And it goes from there. They are both well-written characters, and they were both very relatable. There's reasons why Aiden was jaded and why Lucy was the way she was. I actually very much identified with Lucy a lot because when you're a single parent, that's a lot of your focus. So Lucy's ex, he is very much kind of the comic relief in this. He was so supportive of Lucy, and he was one of her biggest cheerleaders for this book. I really did love that, him and his husband. There's a lot of great little romantic moments in here. There is this F-it moment, which was when they kissed. Well, he was fighting the attraction, and she was just trying to find, she was going on all these little dates and some of them were the ones he helped set her up on, and he didn't like it, and he was getting jealous, and I liked it. This was, everybody was rooting for them. All their coworkers, all their friends were rooting for them. And I did smile and I did giggle through this, and it was a great time, and I do recommend it. So the next 5-star I have for you is Scythe and Sparrow. So I really loved Butcher Buckbird. I didn't particularly love Leather and Lark, but I loved Scythe and Sparrow. This is Rose and Fion's book. This is the perfect ending to this trilogy. So Fion is hiding from his darker side in Nebraska working as a doctor, and then he meets Rose, who is a circus motorcycle performer, and she reads tarot, and she unalives domestic abusers. And she does that in her spare time. And she messes up one time, and Fion has to help her heal because the guy broke her leg. But she did take his eye. Anyhow, it's like Bryn Reaver likes ice a lot. I don't know. Anyway, they grew to love each other. Fion was just concerned about the dark side that was in him. He didn't want to put that out on Rose. Yeah, it's a dichotomy. Anyway, this caused him to be very much a jackass until he got off his butt and stopped being a jackass, basically. So this is a love story with emotionally traumatized characters. The story wasn't just about one character, and it wasn't about psychological fun and games like Butcher and Blackbird. This was a story about two people dealing with their own experiences in a way that suits them, and it had a lot of tension. It had a lot of angst, and then when Rose and Fionn finally gave in, it was everything. The dynamic was really interesting, and it was spicy, and the characters all were inherently flawed, which I absolutely love. And they grew together from being slightly psychopathic lovers to caring about each other and protecting each other, and those they love as well. So, because they did, like, he went after her when stuff happened with her, and it was so good. Okay, anyway, highly recommend this book. So the next book that I want to talk about is Unsaved by Payne Crane. This is about Sadie. She has the weight of the world on her shoulders. She's taking care of her 2 younger brothers because her mother left and her fathers are drunk. And she's also trying to finish college, and she is a figure skater. And her coach is abusive. So Reese is the captain of the college football team. He's bound for the NHL, and he had a very bad hit that was physically and mentally traumatizing for him. He had to physically get better, but when he'd get back onto the ice, he would get into these panic attacks. Sadie helps him through those, and that's when they first meet, was on the ice. And Reese, he falls first. Sadie is very prickly. She's very much trying to protect herself from actually caring. They help each other grow, and they grow through a friendship that turns into more than friendships. They go to friends with benefits, but then it grows to love. And he's always loved her, so he went at her pace. He knew she needed just to be friends, and then they could be but friends with benefits, and then they would end up in love. And so he went her pace, which I really appreciated, and he helped her with her brothers and with her load to try and lighten it. The emotions are very raw in this, and the anxiety and PTSD rep in this one is very, very good. The pacing is on point. I enjoyed the romance. This book is so well written, and the romance is beautiful. I loved the characters. They were all flawed, but they all grew, and I cannot say enough about this book, but I'm going to, because I want you to read it if you haven't read it. So the next book I want to talk about is In the Details by Julia Wolf. This one is about Jake and Clara. I got the ALC for this, and the narrators are Avery Reed and James Cassidy. This book was a re-release to be on audio, because it was the ebook and paperback was already out. So anyway, Jake and Clara began with anonymous hookups, and their hookups continued after they found out who each other were. Jake works for his family's company as like the CFO or something like that, or the COO, and his brother is the CEO. She works as, I think, the CFO as well for her family company. Her family makes motorcycles, and his is in like kind of like the Napa type stores. Anyhow, both single parents, and they're both very protective over their daughters. I really loved how Jake and Claire just literally could not stay away from each other. Jake, he learned to braid hairs to help his daughter. He was a teen dad, and Claire is older than Jake. It is age gap. I'm not calling it reverse age gap because that annoys me. She felt like she couldn't be in the relationship because, I mean, she's older. Jake didn't want to risk his daughter getting attached to his love interest, because that happened before, which was not a good thing that happened. Clara felt the same way about her daughter, but they both sort of inadvertently met each other's daughters, and then they started to become parents to their daughters, because they were growing from just being hookups to being more. And there's a lot of bad decisions that both of them made, but they both took responsibility for their bad decisions. I really love the little romantic gestures in this book, as well as the big ones, because there is a lot of romance in this book. They both had past drama from their relationships. Hers was probably much deeper because of what her ex-husband did, but their love was so deep. It wasn't just surface level. The spice was good. It was a well-balanced plot that was more character driven. The characters were smart, mature, and were willing to grow and change just to be able to be with each other. And I absolutely love this book. I highly recommend the audiobook it's already out now. So another 5-star that I had, and this one was an ALC from Helena Hunting, and it's If You Love Me, and it's coming out the 18th of this month. And you will see this before it comes out. Okay, so Lexi Forster, or Alexandria, she's the new assistant coach for the Toronto Terrors. Roman Hammerstein is the goalie for the Toronto Terrors. They met 3 years ago in New York, where they had a nice weekend together because they met randomly at a baseball game. They were watching baseball in a sports bar, I think it was, and they went back to his hotel room for the weekend, and they could not stop thinking about each other for those 3 times. She did know who he was, I think fairly not right when they met, but soon after. She was a hockey player, and now she's a hockey coach. So she didn't think that he would remember her, but she was professional. She was like, I'm professional enough that it won't matter. So when she walks in as the new assistant coach, he's like, I remember you, and I've been pining for you. Where have you been? Basically. And he wanted her so much, and she wanted him back. There was no fraternization clause in their contracts. She would get in a lot more trouble than he would, because she was in more of a position of power in the power dynamics. She's also the guardian of her 2 younger sisters, because her mom and her stepdad died in a car accident a year earlier. I loved how she parented her sisters, and I loved how Roman stepped in to help care for her sisters the way a father would. Roman is such an interesting character. He's very much a cinnamon roll. He's the papa bear of the whole group, and this is his last season on the ice, because he's going to be retiring. But I love the mutual pining, the small romantic moments, and the romantic gestures. They started their relationship, they were sneaking around because of her job. They're like, okay, we just have to get to the end of the season when he retires, and then they can be together. And it was always going to have consequences for her, because she's the first female coach in the NHL, right? And so people were like, oh, she's just going to be a puck bunny, if they figured that she was marrying him for his money and status. And that does come into play with the third act conflict. And you are going to keep your job. I want you to keep your job, because you are a great coach, and I want you to succeed. And I love that about Roman. This book is much more mature than the other books in this series, because Lexi and Roman are very mature characters. I loved seeing the dynamic between Lexi and Aurora, who is Roman's daughter, and how he had to learn her point of view, and Aurora had to learn his point of view from what happened in book 2, when Aurora dated and snuck around with his best friend. So highly recommend this one. This one is, again, sports romance, and it does have her sense of humor. I think this one is actually my favorite book in the series, and I don't know if the next one's going to top this one, because of how well the characters were written, how the dynamics shifted, and it was shifted naturally. I just loved everything about this book, so I cannot complain about this book. Anyway, you should know that this book deals with sexism in sports, death of parents, and grief as well. So just be aware of that. And Roman is basically one of the best book daddies I've ever read. So I highly recommend it. And moving on to my next 5-star, and that's The Drummer's Heart by Penelope Ward. This one is Second Chance. Atticus and Nicole, their story is very angsty. So Nicole's grandmother needed help. Mimi's like 95 years old, and she didn't know that Atticus and Nicole had been divorced for 3 years. He's now a famous rock star. He was up and coming when they divorced, and neither of them stopped loving each other. Love was never the issue with these characters. It was trust and communication. And they needed time, therapy, and to learn to forgive each other from past mistakes. Reconciliation was slow and painful. You are forced to feel the anguish, the anger, the longing, the jealousy, and the warmth of love that they have for each other, and the fact that they always went to bat for each other. Like, they never stopped loving each other. They went from not speaking to each other to helping Mimi for 2 weeks, and that's where they reconnected, and then they continued their journey and it had a very satisfying ending. The characters were, again, flawed but relatable. There was a lot of my wife energy. He kept calling Nicole, Atticus kept calling Nicole my wife, even when they were divorced. Like, this is marriage in trouble at its finest, and I highly recommend this. The audiobook is performed by Angelina Rocca and Sebastian York. Highly recommend it. Okay, my last 5-star was His Tesoro by Emilia Rossi. This was a new to me author. I have been wanting to read this book since I've heard about it months ago. It finally came out on an audio, and I was like, I really need to read this book. So I did, and I feel like some people didn't really like this book, so I feel like I was in the minority when I say I absolutely love this book. Okay, this book is so good. Sophia is a strong heroine. She is a badass. So she has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, if I say that correctly. Wow, tongue twister. Anyhow, she has to use mobility aids, and so her father abused her. She was useless because she was crippled, which is horrible. He was very abusive to her and her sister. Her father is the Pacan in the Chicago Bratva, and Mateo is the Don in the New York Familia, and theirs is an arranged marriage for an alliance. She's pure sunshine and he's pure grumpy. He had problems in his own past with his parents being murdered by his uncle, and he had to fight to get his city back with his sister Sienna. And so he doesn't trust easily because he was betrayed in some of the worst ways. And he was not going to fall for his wife. He was just like, I'm not going to fall for her. And he did, obviously. And there was a lot of mafia drama, and there was a lot of character growth. I was just sucked into the story right away, and there was not a point where my mind wandered at all in this book. Like, I was enthralled. I was like, what is going to happen next? And the romance was equal parts sweet and sexy. There's a little light tying up, so light BDSM. The pacing was perfect. The third act conflict made sense, and they really had to work for their happily ever after, and they did. They did through loving each other and trusting each other, and I highly recommend this book. It was so good. Anyway, so that is all the 5 stars that I've read in the month of February, and let me know if you've read any of these. Oh, by the way, March 18th is when If You Love Me comes out, and I highly recommend the audiobook. You really should, even if you haven't read the other books in the Toronto Terror series, you really should read this book. You can read it as a standalone, and I recommend it. Anyhow, I am going to end this here. Let me know if you have read any of these books. I would love to know. And if you made it this far in this video and you want to let me know that you're here, but you don't want to say anything, please leave me a pink heart emoji, because we just finished February, and it's weird because January was slow, February went fast. That's all I'm saying. All right. Anyway, until next time, my friends, happy reading. Bye.